Ladies and gentlemen, today we have an absolutely massive update on the ongoing situation in Ukraine, and I'll tell you what, right now, things are not looking good for Vladimir Zelenskyy. You see, yesterday afternoon, President Trump had an extended conversation with Vladimir Putin, during which they discussed the current state of the situation in Ukraine. But perhaps the primary focus during the conversation was Ukraine's recent drone strike against Russia. And so, folks, I want to show you what President Trump had to say about this conversation with Putin. Then we're going to have a lot to talk about. As President Trump posted yesterday afternoon, I just finished speaking by telephone with Vladimir Putin of Russia. The call lasted approximately 1 hour and 15 minutes. We discussed the attack on Russia's docked airplanes by Ukraine and also various other attacks that have been taking place by both sides. It was a good conversation, but not a conversation that will lead to immediate peace. President Putin did say, and very strongly, that he will have to respond to the recent attack on the airfields. And so, folks, like I said, today we're going to have a lot to talk about. But before we do, I want to say real quick that if you guys enjoy the daily news updates, please consider subscribing to the channel because it really does help a lot. But okay, let's break all of this down. According to President Trump, Putin is pretty much just openly admitting that for the time being, peace talks are off the table and that in the very near future, Russia is going to carry out a serious retaliation against Ukraine for this recent drone attack. Now, as many of you know, President Trump's foreign policy agenda is that of diplomacy and peace negotiations rather than throwing taxpayer money towards never-ending wars. But as it would seem, there are entities, both foreign and domestic, that are actively trying to push the United States into directly getting involved into what's been going on in Eastern Europe. And on that note, ladies and gentlemen, take a look at this.
So we're in it now, and the pressure is going to get ratcheted up. What President Trump did today in that Truth Social, folks, is stunning. No American president, FDR, Lincoln, Johnson, Kennedy, Nixon, Reagan, no one's put out in real time. They talk about a readout, just a technical term. This is when the State Department or the Kremlin, after the call, they get all the diplomatic language, they put out their spin. He gave it to you raw, right? Kind of in the look, sound like the moment they hung up, as President Trump has wanted to do, to disintermediate the mainstream media. That thing came down. Jack Posobiec saw it, called me, boom, we had it, and it was down quite quickly. Went back up, but read it. Think about it. Tonight, read that. Read what Putin told him. These guys in the KGB, they're not, they're not into big flowery rhetoric. They're kind of into action. They've been humiliated. The Ukrainians humiliated them. This was an audacious, bold strike and showed the weakness in their nuclear triad. They didn't go after conventional forces. They weren't there to get some Wagner battalion of mercenaries. They went to take down the equivalent. It was equivalent of the Mexican cartels flying up to Omaha and taking out the Strategic Air Command, 40% of it, on the tarmac, wingtip to wingtip. Putin was blunt. President Trump said, I don't think we're going to be talking about peace for a while. And, oh, by the way, we're going to hit back, and we're going to hit back hard. People should take that like a papal bull. These people are not kidding around. They're not kidding around. And as I've warned, we are inexorably being drawn into a massive conflict on the Eurasian landmass.
And so, folks, if all of that sounds concerning, that's because it is. Now, I want to quickly address a comment that I've seen pop up underneath some of my previous videos saying, how dare you not support Ukraine? They have a right to defend themselves. And I actually completely agree with you. Ukraine most certainly does have a right to defend itself. But at the same time, all of us over here in America have absolutely no obligation to continue throwing hundreds of billions of dollars into a war effort that, quite frankly, isn't really our problem, especially when we have so many domestic issues here in our own country. Ladies and gentlemen, America first means that we prioritize the well-being of Americans living here in America first. But now, as you all know, right this very moment, President Trump is doing every single thing he can to de-escalate this war, despite it not even being his problem to solve. But while he's trying to do that, Both sides of the equation, both Russia and Ukraine, are actively escalating the entire situation, as we all just saw with this recent drone attack. So personally, honestly, I do think that Ukraine has a right to defend itself, but I also think that the USA has done more than enough already to help resolve the entire situation, and that at this point, it's probably time for us to just step away altogether. However, it must be acknowledged, if President Trump is actually able to negotiate a peace deal between Russia and Ukraine, it would be a direct slap in the face of all of the war-hungry anti-American globalists that actually want this war to continue. Have you ever wondered why so many people are pushing back against President Trump's goal of achieving peace in Eastern Europe? It's because they want war in Eastern Europe. Seriously, it really is that simple. But you want to see something crazy? Check this out. Just 2 days after carrying out a massive drone attack that destroyed over $7 billion worth of Russian military equipment, over 2,600 miles deep into Russian territory, Zelenskyy is now saying that he wants a ceasefire after he heard that Putin is planning on carrying out a massive punitive retaliation. So to be very clear, now that Zelenskyy has realized that because of this recent drone attack, Putin is about to go ballistic, figuratively speaking, well, maybe literally speaking, who really knows, now Zelenskyy wants a peace deal. Folks, you can't make this stuff up. But you know what? Here's the takeaway. Foundationally, America first means focusing on domestic priorities here in America before we focus on foreign conflicts. The reality is, the US has absolutely no obligation to fund Ukraine's war when people here in America are struggling, and when it seems like neither Ukraine or Russia are making serious efforts to achieve peace. Some people like to argue that we can do both. We can chew bubblegum and walk at the same time. We can help everyone else all around the world and also take care of Americans. But honestly, I'm not so sure that that's even true. We've been involved in various foreign conflicts now for decades, and all that's happened is that the United States has slowly deteriorated year by year. So ladies and gentlemen, like I've said, between you and me, I think it's time that we actually start putting America first. Now, ladies and gentlemen, before we wrap up, I do want to say real quick that we officially have a Morse News Twitter page as well as a Morse News Facebook page. So if you use either of those platforms, please go down below and drop a follow in order to get breaking news updates that relate to everything we talk about here in the YouTube videos. But everyone, that is going to be a wrap for today's video, so please go down below and drop a comment. Let me know what you think about all of this. Please like the video while you're down there, and like I said earlier, please consider subscribing to the channel because it really does help a ton. Thank you all very much for tuning in today, and of course, as always, stay safe.